Kevin Runlet, we are talking about workers' compensation in Mississippi, trying to answer questions that injured Mississippians may have. And today what we're going to talk about is why in the world do we have workers' comp? What is its purpose? Why is it there? Well, back in 1948, the lawmakers kind of adopted what other states were doing and wrote the workers' compensation laws and voted them into actual laws. So they have been controlling since 1948. But why? What was the purpose behind it? Well, you can read up and see that the purpose of workers' comp, or kind of the mission of workers' comp, is to provide quick medical needs of injured workers and try to get them back to work as quickly as possible. That's kind of the purpose of it. So the best way to explain this is to talk about the situation that would occur if we did not have workers' compensation laws. So let's say a person is working for an employer and is injured legitimately on the job. Maybe because the employer did something wrong. Maybe they didn't file OSHA rules or regulations. Maybe not. Maybe it was the employee's fault, excuse me. So what would happen if the workers' comp laws weren't there? Well, maybe the employer helps that worker out, maybe they don't. If there's no legal remedies there, or if there's no legal ramifications if they don't, why would they? So you can see how this could cause problems. So the injured worker could be injured and say, hey, pay for this, help me out, and the employer says, no, you're fired. Then that person is just injured, has no work, and is destitute, and there's nothing they can do. Or that injured worker could have, without workers' compensation, turned around and sued the employer. And then what happens with a lawsuit? Well, it takes a long time to find an attorney. It takes a long time for the attorney to draft a complaint. It takes a long time for them to get that complaint filed and served. It takes a long time to get any kind of hearing dates. It takes years to get a trial. So what's happening to this injured worker while all this litigation is going on is they're not getting any treatment. They don't get any money until maybe years later at the end of that lawsuit. So it put injured workers who were working to help this employer make money in a very bad situation. And so I think the intent was very good when they put this into place. It doesn't work perfectly, but I think the intent was good. So with the laws of workers' compensation, what happened? Well, it was really a trade-off. So the law says that if a person is injured on the job, then the employer, if they have 5 or more employees, is required to have workers' comp insurance. And what that does is if they are injured on the job, then the employer is required, or the insurance is required, to immediately start paying for medical needs of that person. Immediately get them treated, immediately pay for all the things that they need to get them back to work. Also, if the doctor that person is treating with says that they can't go back to work right now, then the insurance company and the employer is required to pay them a portion of their wages. Let me go ahead and say that these are called temporary total disability benefits, and they are not much. It's better than nothing, but they are not much. It is 2/3 of your average weekly wage. However, if you're a person that's making what we call high wages, there is a cap on what these temporary benefits will be. So right now it's around $608. I'd have to go check. It changes every year. $608 for 2025, let's say that's the right number. If you're making, you do the math. If you're making a high wage and you take 2/3 of that, it may be much higher than the $608, but all the insurance has to pay is that $608 because there is a cap on the weekly benefits that they'll pay. So it is better to have some income coming in if you can't work, but just be aware, it's not much. And it can cause issues with people, especially if someone has a car payment, they have a house payment, or they have to pay a high rent to where they live, they have to buy food, they have a family, and they're used to making these wages, and then they're injured and they're relying on these temporary benefits. It's difficult, and we understand that. So it's an imperfect system, but it does provide some benefits. The goal is to get the person back to work as quickly as possible, help them along the way as best they can. We're here to make sure that the injured worker is getting the benefits that they deserve. So I hope this kind of helped you understand a little bit more about workers' comp. If you have any questions, please let us know, and I hope you have a great day.